In the next slides, we'll look at 5 examples of sentences from Chapter 1 and talk about how to approach translating them. We'll start with a relatively short sentence. And the first thing we want to do is scan quickly for some recognizable grammatical particles or other particles that might help us identify the parts of this sentence. So the only thing we really see here is a third case marker, agentive case marker key. So then let's go to the verb. And here we have a verb that has quite a lot of meanings, but one of them is to be affected by. And so we can see that the third case marker fits nicely with this verb. So something is affected by what precedes this key. And so what comes before the key? Knowing some vocabulary, you'll recognize that this word means illness. So something is affected by an illness. This is an adjective that means fierce or strong. And this is an indefinite particle. So the relationship between these two is noun-adjective. And you remember that an adjective always follows a noun. So someone is affected by a strong illness. And here's the person who's affected. It's the honorific for father. Father is affected by a strong illness. So here's a slightly longer sentence. And again, what we want to do is start by breaking the sentence down into smaller parts by identifying first some of the particles that we might recognize. So we can see, first of all, a third case marker right here. We can see this plural marker. We can see this syntactic particle that means also. We see this nay, and it's following a verb. So this is the kind of nay that's not a ablative, not a fifth case marker, but the kind that is verb nay, so having verbed. And then we can see the final verb is this compound verb, sowadup. So we're looking at the third case marker and a pluralized phrase that is likely to be the agent of the verb. Then we're looking for a final verb here, sowadup, which means to make a request or to make supplication. And then we see verb nay, this phrase right here, which is a way of saying having verbed, then some other verb occurs. So that's why we have two verbs here. So having done this verb, the subject does this verb. And so we see the first verb in the phrase is broken up in two. So chakse is a verb that you may know to prostrate. And the many times, many is put right in the middle. So this kind of adverbial phrase is inserted into the middle of the compound verb. So chak mongdutse is to prostrate many times. So then let's go back to the agent and sort out this section. So here we have a plural marker, and we know from our vocabulary lists or dictionary that we have two nouns here. So it's the heart disciples of the Lama and the Lama's spiritual sons, so two kinds of disciples. In the third case, these are the agents, so the heart disciples and the spiritual sons also prostrated many times and made supplication. Or you could put this, you could use this nay in the past tense and say, having prostrated many times, the heart disciples and spiritual sons made a request or made supplication. Okay, let's take a look at this medium-sized sentence and identify some landmarks first. We can see the final verb here is to write. And before that, we see this word ending in a ra, so some kind of an adverb perhaps, or maybe a second case marker. We can see a sixth case marker here, so that links the things that come before it and after it. And we see a do here. We also see this sa, which if you know the term bu, meaning sun, then you'll recognize that this is that word with a third case agentive marker sa on it. So going back to the verb, something was written. That's what we know, first of all. So now it's a question of looking up some vocabulary. So here, and then blocking off the words so that you know which are individual words. So this is a letter, and this is a will, so like a final testament. So somebody wrote a final testament or a will letter, a testament letter. And then the sixth case here is somehow modifying the will, the testament letter. And so let's kind of read backwards if we think of our arrows going this way now from the will letter, the testament letter. So somebody wrote a testament letter which, taking this as which and recognizing this to be a common verb, jukba, that can mean many things, but often it'll mean something like to establish or to refer to, which makes sense in the context of writing a letter or a will. So somebody wrote a will which established everything that comes before it. So this phrase that comes before it is actually in some dictionaries as an entire phrase. And it means to, for the son to claim. Zin is a verb meaning to claim or to capture. And pashul means the patrimony or the paternal inheritance. So the son, as an agent in the third case, captures the paternal inheritance. So that's this whole phrase. And so somebody, and the author of this will is actually missing. So there's an omitted subject or agent that would come at the beginning of the sentence, or probably was referred to in the text before this sentence, and so it's implied right now. So somebody, non-specified, wrote a will, a final testament letter, which established that the son would claim the patrimony or the paternal inheritance. And then what have we not accounted for yet is this gebard, which is an adverbial expression that usually means something like extensively. So you could think of it actually as, in a sense, it's an adjective that modifies the letter, so it's an extensive letter, testament letter. Or you could think of it as an adverb that modifies the verb, so somebody extensively wrote. But it makes more sense in English to say somebody wrote an extensive testament letter which established that the son would claim the patrimony. In this sentence, we'll start as usual by finding some particles, breaking down the phrases, and looking for the final verb. So here we have the final verb to be born or to give birth. Here we see a sixth case marker. We see a la here. And that's about it. So one of the important phrases that will help us right here, or expressions that will help us, is this tse. So when you have something, this is something to put in your notes. When you have verb be tse, that means when, it's hard to write on the screen. That means when the verb happened. So in this case, that's a good place to break a phrase. So everything before that is modified by that say. So when something happened, something was born. Now we know the basic structure of this sentence. So we can look at the second part first. So amala bumochi gye. So ama means mother. Pumo means girl. girl, child. And cheek is 1, the adjective, the number 1. So to mother was born a girl. So when did this happen? So now we read backwards from the when. So we look to the front to see maybe who the subject is. So when I, then we know this verb means to reach or to arrive at. So when I arrived at Lo Shi, year 4. In other words, when I turned 4, when I arrived at my 4th year, Amala Pumochi Gie, mother gave birth to a girl, or to mother was born a girl, but in English we don't say that. Here's a somewhat more complicated sentence. We'll start as usual by looking for some landmarks that we can recognize, and then we want to identify the vocabulary. So we can see the end a verbal compound that we can recognize. So this verb gu, means to have to or must. And chung is often appended to a verb to mean, or to a sentence that means something like, it happened that something must have taken place. So chung means to emerge or to occur. So it occurred that something was necessary. That's what we know at the end. Then we'll look for some grammatical particles here. We see a la, which is helpful. We see a 6th case connective marker and another 6th case connective marker there. We see the word and, so 2 things are being linked. And this expression card means something like at the time of, or sometimes can mean in addition to, or right before something occurred, or just when. And so this links, this is connected to what comes before it, and we might put something like a comma here, and see then what comes after it as a separate phrase, and what becomes before this card with its own verb here is another chung, as the first phrase of the sentence. So let's look at what happened at the end, in the end of the sentence first. And we want to isolate some vocabulary here. So aku tang ani is uncle and aunt. And then yokche is a servant. So connecting these two with the 6th case marker, we have a servant, reading this way, reading backwards, a servant of uncle and aunt. So somebody had to become a servant of uncle and aunt. And then when did that happen? Let's read backwards from this card. So something else occurred. Here's our verb chung again. And it's actually negated, so something did not occur. So let's go back to the beginning of this phrase, and we'll pause this time at the la and look at what comes before the la. We have here a phrase that ends with the adjective 3, sum. And so what are the 3? It's myself and mother and child. So in other words, this is Milarepa and his mother and sister. So the 3 of us, mother and child and myself. And then then we'll look at this phrase. This is what we haven't done yet. So again, we'll isolate some vocabulary. So we have here gyu, the cause. And norwang is wealth and authority, 2 common words that mean wealth and authority. So we can say, without taking the negation, without a cause for wealth and authority, without them occurring, for the 3 of us, myself and my mother and her child, my aunt and uncle, or let's say we became, these are still the kind of, these are who is happening to this chung as well as this chung. So we had to become the servants of my aunt and uncle.